Hello and welcome to another episode of Wrestler Spotlight. I'm the Maritime Warrior, and today we are taking a look at our first tag team, one of my all-time favorite tag teams, Axe and Smash Demolition. So the way this episode is going to work, we are going to look at the individual careers of Bill Eadie and Barry Darsow, the two men that portrayed Axe and Smash. Then we will look at their careers as Demolition in the WWF, and then post-WWF. So let's start with Bill Eadie, because he did start his career a full decade before Barry Darsow. Bill Eadie started his career in the early 70s and did wrestle under his real name, but then he got a big break becoming the new tag team of Gito Mongol, becoming Bolo Mongol and forming the New Mongols. Bill Eadie found a lot of success with the Mongols, winning multiple tag team titles and even some singles titles. Titles that he would win include the ASWA World Tag Team titles, the NWA World Tag Team titles, 3 IWA World Tag Team titles, and the NWA North American Heavyweight title 2 times. A lot of people might remember this version of the Mongols mostly for their time in IWA, that was Eddie Einhorn's promotion, in the mid-70s. In 1976, Bill Eadie would go out on his own and find success as a singles wrestler, becoming the Masked Superstar. The Masked Superstar is probably most remembered for his rivalry with Mr. Wrestling 2. This rivalry happened in Georgia Championship Wrestling. As the Masked Superstar, Bill Eadie would win the Georgia Heavyweight title 4 times, the NWA TV title once, the NWA Georgia Tag Team titles once, the NWA World Tag Team titles twice, the NWA Mid-Atlantic Tag Team titles once, the NWA National Tag Team titles twice, the NWA National Heavyweight title 3 times, and the NWA Florida Southern Heavyweight title once. That covers Bill Eadie. Now let's get into Barry Darsow's early career. Barry Darsow started his career in the early 80s and went by a few names, Man Mountain Darsow and Crusher Darsow. In 1984, Darsow would become a Russian sympathizer, renaming himself Crusher Khrushchev. As Crusher Khrushchev, he would win his first championship in Mid-South Wrestling, winning the Mid-South television title. He would also win the Florida United States Tag Team titles. In Jim Crockett Promotions, Khrushchev would team up with Ivan and Nikita Koloff. Khrushchev and the Koloffs would famously feud with the Road Warriors during this time period. Khrushchev and Ivan Koloff would win 2 NWA World Tag Team titles together. Khrushchev would even win the vacant Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship at Starrcade 85, defeating Sam Houston. Khrushchev and the Koloffs would also win the NWA World 6-Man Tag Team Championships, and Khrushchev and Ivan Koloff would also win the NWA United States Tag Team Championships. And that covers Darsow's pre-Demolition career. Now let's get to 1987 in the WWF. The original Demolition that debuted was managed by Johnny Valiant, and this was Bill Eadie and the former Moondog Rex. People kept recognizing Moondog Rex, so they needed to find a new Smash. Enter Barry Darsow, who would portray Smash for the rest of the Demolition run. Eventually, the team stopped being managed by Johnny Valiant and started being managed by Mr. Fuji. In 1987, they wrestled various tag teams including the Islanders, the Killer Bees, the Rougeau Brothers, the Can-Am Connection, the Young Stallions, and the British Bulldogs. In 1988, at WrestleMania 4, Demolition were the #1 contenders to Strikeforce's tag team titles. Demolition would win the WWF World Tag Team titles at WrestleMania 4, starting their monster reign that would last 478 days. That is the longest in that title's history. They defended their titles against the top babyface tag teams of that time, like the Powers of Pain, the British Bulldogs, and the Rougeau Brothers. At the first SummerSlam in 1988, Demolition would defend their titles against the Hart Foundation. Demolition would have both Mr. Fuji and the Hart Foundation's former manager, Jimmy Hart, in their corner. Demolition would successfully defend the belts that night. At the Survivor Series, Axe and Smash would turn babyface when their manager, Mr. Fuji, would turn on them, siding with the Powers of Pain. Demolition and the Powers of Pain would feud all the way to WrestleMania 5, when they would face off in a 2-on-3 handicap match. The Powers of Pain would have Mr. Fuji with them in the match. Demolition would get the win and retain their belts, hitting the Demolition decapitation on Mr. Fuji. After WrestleMania 5, Demolition would defend their titles both against Akeem and the Big Boss Man, the Twin Towers, and the Brain Busters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan. On the May 27, 1989 edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, Demolition defended their titles against the Brain Busters. The Brain Busters would get the win by disqualification. Demolition and the Brain Busters would rematch on the July 29th edition of Saturday Night's Main Event in a best 2 out of 3 falls match, and with the help of Andre the Giant, the Brain Busters were the new WWF Tag Team Champions. The following month at SummerSlam, Demolition would team up with Hacksaw Jim Duggan to defeat Andre the Giant and the Twin Towers, the Big Boss Man, and Akeem. Demolition would chase the Brain Busters until they would finally win their titles back on October 2nd, 1989. At the 1989 Survivor Series, Demolition would be part of the Hulkamaniacs with Hulk Hogan and Jake the Snake. They would take on the $1 Million Team, the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, Zeus, and the Powers of Pain. They would then start feuding with the Colossal Connection. This was Bobby Heenan's new tag team of Andre the Giant and Haku. On December 13th, 1989, Demolition would lose the WWF World Tag Team titles to the Colossal Connection. They would be champions for 72 days in their second reign. Demolition would continue to feud with the Colossal Connection leading up to WrestleMania 6, when they would have their rematch. A lot of people, including myself, say that Demolition's last big hurrah was WrestleMania 6 because they would win the WWF World Tag Team titles for a third time. That was the record at the time for most WWF World Tag Team titles, won by a single team. This match isn't Demolition's best match, but it's not their fault either. Andre the Giant is in pretty poor health at this point in time. He doesn't even tag into the match. Haku does the entire match. This would also be one of Andre the Giant's last matches in the WWF. 13 days later, Demolition are in Japan for a WWF New Japan All Japan Super Show. And in one of the main events, Demolition would take on Giant Baba and Andre the Giant. It's during this tour of Japan where Axe would have an allergic reaction to some shellfish, and it would cause Axe to have some heart problems. With Axe being out of action for a few weeks, Vince needed a quick fix. That's when he brought in Crush, the third member of Demolition. So if Axe is unable to compete, Crush and Smash would compete. Around this time period, Demolition would turn heel again. All 3 members of Demolition would start feuding with the Hart Foundation. This would lead to a best 2 out of 3 falls match at SummerSlam 1990, where Demolition would defend their WWF World Tag Team titles versus the Hart Foundation. But which 2 members of Demolition would be in the match? The 2 members would be Crush and Smash. Demolition would end up losing the WWF World Tag Team titles to the Hart Foundation with a little bit of help from the new tag team in town, Road Warrior Hawk and Road Warrior Animal, the Legion of Doom. This would end Demolition's third and final WWF World Tag Team title reign. Their third reign ended at 148 days. After SummerSlam, all 3 members of Demolition started feuding with the Legion of Doom. Demolition would even have a few 6-man tag team matches versus the Legion of Doom and WWF World Heavyweight Champion, the Ultimate Warrior. 2 of the 6-man tag team matches were recorded. One was at Madison Square Garden, and the other was on the October edition of Saturday Night's Main Event. The World Champion Ultimate Warrior and the Legion of Doom would get the win on both occasions. This would lead into Survivor Series, where Demolition would be part of the Perfect Team with team captain Mr. Perfect. They would take on the Warriors. WWF World Heavyweight Champion and captain of the team, the Ultimate Warrior, would team up with Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich, who was the Intercontinental Champion at the time, and the Legion of Doom, Road Warrior Hawk and Road Warrior Animal. The sole survivor was the Ultimate Warrior. Survivor Series would be Axe's last match in the WWF. He would leave immediately after Survivor Series. If you've ever seen Survivor Series 1990 and noticed there's something different with Axe's hair, that's why. He knew he was leaving. He wasn't putting gel in his hair tonight. After leaving the WWF, Axe would work various promotions, the likes of New Japan Pro Wrestling and Global Wrestling Federation. He would work these promotions as either Axe Demolition or Demolition Axe, or Axis the Demolisher. He would also form a new tag team on the independents called Demolition 2000 with Demolition Blast. Back in the WWF, Smash and Crush continue teaming together. But Demolition in 1991 is a shell of its former self. No longer the World Tag Team Champions, not even contenders, they continue to feud with the Legion of Doom, losing all their matches. Even at WrestleMania 7, they lose to two Japanese wrestlers that the fans don't even know, Genichiro Tenryu and Koji Katao. The fall was hard for Demolition. A year prior to that, they were winning their third World Tag Team titles. Now they're jobbing to two Japanese wrestlers that the fans don't even know. Later on in the year, Demolition was no more in the WWF. Barry Darsow, who played Smash, was repackaged as the Repo Man. He would continue to work in the WWF until 1993 under the Repo Man character. In the mid to late 90s, he would also work for WCW under various gimmicks. Crush would eventually make his return to the WWF in 1992 under the gimmick of Kona Crush, a smiling babyface from Hawaii who used the head vice as his finishing move. As Kona Crush, his biggest angle came against Doink the Clown, which culminated at WrestleMania 9. Crush would eventually turn heel and side with Mr. Fuji and Yokozuna and feud with Macho Man Randy Savage. Crush would eventually do jail time in the mid-90s and would come back as part of the Nation of Domination. When he left the Nation of Domination, he started his own stable, the Disciples of Apocalypse, and not long after that, he would leave for WCW. In WCW, he would be remembered as a member of the NWO, and later on as part of the tag team Chronic with Brian Clark, who portrayed Adam Bomb in the WWF. They would win the WCW World Tag Team titles together. Unfortunately, in 2007, Bryan Adams, Crush, would pass away. In the mid-2000s, Axe and Smash would reunite and start wrestling on the indies. They would even tour the Maritimes, wrestling a couple of shows for Ultimate Championship Wrestling and one show for XWA. I was actually at that XWA show with my buddies Corey and Joel, the other Wrestling with the Bros, and Maritime wrestler BT Bobby Mann. On this night, Demolition defeated the tag team of Dick Durning and Dale Dangle. Dick Durning would become one of the biggest stars in Maritime Wrestling and is a former North Pro heavyweight champion. Now, according to Cage Match, Demolition stopped wrestling in 2017. I know Barry Darsow wrestled after that, but Axe, Bill Eadie, stopped wrestling in 2017. My final thoughts on Demolition's career, they're one of my all-time favorite tag teams. My favorite moment from them is probably them winning the WWF World Tag Team titles at WrestleMania 6 from the Colossal Connection. WrestleMania 6 is my all-time favorite pay-per-view. My favorite wrestler, the Ultimate Warrior, he won both the WWF World Heavyweight title and retained the Intercontinental title on this night. And then you have my favorite tag team winning back the tag titles for a third time. It was a very special night for me. I also think they're well overdue for a Hall of Fame induction in the WWE. Now that Vince McMahon isn't there anymore, I hope they go in, and I hope they're both alive when they go in, because Bill Eadie, he's in his 70s now, Darsow, he's in his 60s. Wrestlers, you never know what's going to happen, but I hope they can go in while they're both still alive. And with that, that'll be the end of this episode. I want to thank you all for listening to me. I'm a real huge fan of tag team wrestling, so tag teams might be something that I do a little bit more often here on Wrestler Spotlight. You never know. It's just what I feel like talking about on that particular day. But for now, I hope you enjoyed and have a great day.